Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It is a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Thank you for listening to the Speaking with Confidence podcast. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. Confidence, a podcast that's here to help you unlock the power of effective public speaking. I'm your host, Tim Newman, and I'm excited to take you on a journey to become a better public speaker. Today's guest, Stacey Chazin, is a dynamic leadership coach who empowers introverts to transform their natural qualities into professional assets. With a master's in organizational development and leadership and certification as a Myers Briggs Type Indicator practitioner, she draws from her extensive corporate and nonprofit experience. Stacey passionately guides her introverts towards achieving fulfillment and success, reshaping how introversion is viewed and valued in the workplace. Stacey, welcome to the show, and I'm so glad that we connected because I think you and I are the same person.
Thank you, Tim. I'm really happy to be here.
So, talk a little bit about your journey and how you came to embrace the whole idea of being an introvert.
Sure. So as I've told this story more and more, when I'm talking with people about this work, I realized that my story actually began earlier and earlier in my life than when I first started telling it, to the point where I really believe it began in preschool. And I say that because when we're in preschool, as early as that, we hear messages from teachers, from parents, from other people's parents that being more social, having more friends, taking part in every activity of circle time or playing with a whole bunch of kids on the playground is preferable to going off on your own or having just one or two friends or, building a tower made out of blocks with your best friend. And we start hearing this message, and we don't know it at the time, that extroversion is better than introversion. And I certainly didn't know those words back then. But when I look back, I realized that throughout my life, starting back in preschool and throughout elementary school and high school and even college, we continue to get these messages. We hear you need to be a better collaborator. You need to speak up more in class, right? Most classes, you'll get a student participation grade. And that doesn't speak to dropping a note to the teacher at the end of the class. It's how often you're raising your hand and making some contribution, right?
Right.
And this follows us into our career, where being someone who's a great networker, who likes to schmooze new clients, who loves to collaborate and offer up quick ideas around a conference room table rather than having the time to think these through. All of these things are characteristics of extroverts. And for me, I had a seminal moment. One of my first aha moments was when I was working for a nonprofit organization. I think back in, I want to say it was around 2012, my boss had everyone in the company take a Myers Briggs Type Indicator assessment, or MBTI. And for any of your listeners who are not familiar with the MBTI, it is the world's most commonly used personality assessment. It's used a lot in the business world by employers. And essentially what it does is it lets you know what your preferences are along 4 different dimensions. One of which is how you get your energy from the world. And if you are someone who is introverted, or technically we say has a preference for introversion, you tend to be energized when you have time to think by yourself, be by yourself, engage with maybe 1 or 2 other people, or even engage with many people, but not for as long a period of time as an extrovert might. And an extrovert's the opposite, right? They're going to be fueled by the interactions with others. They don't need the breaks like we do. It's a whole different ballgame. And so I took the MBTI and I I discovered that the word for my energy and the reason that I was feeling drained and the reason that I was feeling sometimes that I didn't quite fit in and needed to change, thought I needed to change who I was that I was introverted. And I not only learned about myself, but I learned about the people I work with as well, because we had an opportunity to share our Myers Briggs profiles with one another. And it was so eye opening because it made me see, oh, now I know why you drive me crazy, right? Because you have a
Exactly.
completely opposite letters than I do, right? I'm an ISTJ, which is introverted, sensing, thinking, and judging. The opposite of that, an ENFP. And it gave me insights into other people where I realized, okay, that's why you drive me crazy. It's not that you're not working hard or you're not as smart as me or you're not as anything as me. We all approach things differently. And a lot of that can be explained by our Myers-Briggs profile.
Right.
And I started to realize then that pretending to be something I wasn't, right? I'd heard, being an extrovert is better than being an introvert. I'd heard this indirectly or directly, again, since I was 3 years old, that was a recipe for failure. And I started to see what would happen when I stopped pretending to be an extrovert, but started to embrace and show up as my authentic introverted self. And it was like night and day. We seldom are successful when we try to be something we're not. And that absolutely applies to being an introvert or extrovert. So fast forward a little bit, and I became a leadership junkie. I decided to go back to school and get a master's in organizational development and leadership. And really, when I look back on that program, the theme of it in retrospect was leading from a place of self-awareness. And as an introvert, to me, that was recognizing that I'm an introvert, knowing what that means for the situations and circumstances in which I'm going to thrive and most likely to be successful and feel self-fulfilled. And I started blogging about that, what it means to be more authentic and to not try to sweep your introversion under the rug. And I got amazing emails from people to say, I feel seen, right? How do you know? That's just what I was thinking. And it was so impactful for me to get messages like that. I've always been a writer, but I've never written like that before and made that impact before. And I said, you know what? This is what I meant to do. Like, I'm here I want to help other introverts stop feeling badly about their introversion and learn how to embrace the gifts, the strengths of being an introvert so they can feel better about themselves. They can be more effective in their jobs and they can be recognized for the leaders that they're meant to be. So that was more than a nutshell, but that's how I got here.
And you said a lot of things in there, and it's really important, like you said, we have to know who we are to be effective really at anything. And for me, I struggled when I was younger too with some of those same things. Kind of being forced, or me forced myself to be more outgoing because that's what I thought what I was supposed to be doing. And that's kind of where, I started to learn as well that, need to just be authentic, lean into who you are, do the things that are working for you. And that's how you end up being successful. So how can we get, the younger generation to understand that, figure out who they are? Because I don't think they spend a whole lot of time thinking about who they are and what makes them tick and what makes them, what their strengths and weaknesses are. How can we get them to not get into their 30s and 40s to figure it out?
Yeah, great question. So a really easy way to do it is if you have the opportunity to take a Myers Briggs assessment, or there are other assessments out there like the Enneagram, another assessment that helps you to identify really what makes you tick just through a different lens. So I think if you have the opportunity to do that, or you can do that on your own, you can actually do it with a practitioner, or you can do it right directly through the Myers Briggs website and get your report by yourself without having to involve anyone else.
Right.
And it's not that expensive. So that's one way of doing that. If short of doing that, or even in addition to doing that, what I'd suggest is if people could start to pay attention to when are you feeling at your best? When are you doing your
Yes.
best work? And this is an approach that I take with my coaching clients. It's a framework called appreciative coaching. And essentially, what it does is it starts with an exercise where I guide people to identify what's called their positive core. So that's the best of who they are, really. And you can do this. You can do this on your own as well. You can think about, reflect on what were some times at work, maybe it's when you were in school, if you're still younger in your career, and don't have a lot of work experiences to reflect on yet. What were some times where I felt like I was doing my best work, where I felt like I was recognized for my strengths, where I felt most fulfilled? Questions like that. And to write down what those experiences were, and then take a look at what are some common themes across those experiences in terms of, let's say, they were all experiences where you had a chance to be a writer. You contributed in writing. Writing is a strength that many introverts have. Maybe one of the things is you had an opportunity to collaborate with people in small groups or just with one other person, or you had an opportunity to do, it was an opportunity to do work that was very values based. It was aligned with your values as a human, and not even necessarily as an introvert, but introverts
Right.
tend to have more of a need, a desire to do value based work. So you take a look at that, and from that process, you can start to pull out what are the things that you were able to apply to these situations that made them successful. And you might, for example, find that my positive core is, and I'll use myself as an example, I think pieces of my positive core are that I'm a strong writer. I like to go deep in relationships and go deep in subject matter expertise. And I like to do values based work. Those are some things that make up my positive core. And with that, like, nugget of information, you can begin to see what are the situations and circumstances, work environments, project expectations. What are the types of things that you want to have in place to increase the likelihood that you're going to be successful, that you're going to feel fulfilled. And then you can start to seek out opportunities and roles that align with your positive core.
Yeah, and I think along with that, that it's okay to lean into that. It's okay to I wouldn't say buck the system or go against what society says, but that's kind of what it is, though, right? Because,
Oh
like you
yeah.
said, we've been told and almost forced into a track, and anytime somebody goes against that track, oh, they're rebelling against us. They're they're everything but what they actually are. And I see this all the time. I tell the students and the people I coach, it's okay. Don't worry about what they're telling you. Don't worry about those things. If this is what makes you successful, then that's what you need to do. Because if you're doing what they're telling you to do and you're not successful, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that, when you say, buck the system, right? Most workplaces are designed with extroverts in mind,
Yeah.
right? Think about it. Right? We have that, I know on my schedule, back-to-back meetings. Some companies I've been working with, they try to build in, okay, we're going to just have our meetings go 50 minutes rather than 60 minutes. So people have a chance to take a break in between, and they can't even stick to that.
Right.
So you have back-to-back meetings. You're expected to be on all the time, even when you're working at home. I think that there's sometimes an increased expectation that you're available after hours because you have access to your phone, to your laptop. Um, if you're on site, there are a lot of open office layouts that are very popular these days. There are expectations, again, of networking and schmoozing, and all of these things are extrovert friendly. They're not aligned with how introverts are going to thrive.
Yeah, and that when you talk about work from home or being on being connected at home, for me, I feel obligated, and when I'm at home. Oh, because I don't want to let people down. I'm also an ISTJ, and the reliability. If I say I'm going to do something, it's going to get done, and all those things. So if something comes through, the thought that goes through my head, oh, now hold on, I've got to stop doing what I'm doing and get this taken care of, and
Yeah.
it's that again is the good and bad of technology, and and these types of things. And we've talked about this a little bit. We do this to ourselves. It's kind of some of that inner self-talk that we have to be okay with saying, you know what, I'm not going to do this now. I need to take the time to do whatever it is that I was doing or relax or whatever, and I'll get to this later. And
Yeah.
that's another hard thing to do. It's another hard thing, I think, for people like us to wrap our brains around, that it's going to be okay if we don't do whatever that is at that given point in time.
Yeah, that's a great point. Introverts also tend to be averse to conflict. So saying no is a very hard thing for introverts to do sometimes, right? We say yes. We want to be a team player, although we don't want to
Mm-hmm.
always be always be with a team. But we want to be a team player, and so saying no because we are averse to conflict, because sometimes we are not confident speaking up assertively. We don't say no sometimes when we need to. And the challenge with that is it kind of fuels burnout for us, right? An
Yes.
introvert burnout. It's like when your energy is depleted on a regular basis and you're not having a chance to recharge. If you're overloaded with work, you're taking on things that are more than what your bandwidth can handle, or you're saying yes to something that maybe isn't quite aligned with your skill set, which makes you uncomfortable. All these things can fuel burnout, and that can affect you physically, emotionally, psychologically. It takes its toll, and no good is going to come of that.
Right. Now, when we go down that road, we also have to understand that there are some things that we have to do,
Yes.
such as communication. Like, so let's just say, and we'll get into to some characteristics of the introverted leader here in a little bit, but we have to be able to communicate with people. And let's just say a team meeting, you have to
Yeah.
you have to be able to stand up, and I say stand up. You don't necessarily have to stand up, but you have to be able to communicate your whatever it is your responsibilities are. If
Yeah.
you're reporting on a project, if you're giving a presentation on something else, if you're pitching a client, whatever that is, sometimes it's stepping outside of that box and performing, and we have
Yep.
to be sometimes we have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Absolutely.
and that's a different skill set that we've got to get over, I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not at all. I think that's a great point. What I'll say on top of that is you can do those things. You can speak up at meetings and you can present in front of a group or present in front of a large, a ballroom at a conference. You can do all these things. The key is doing it in a way that taps into your
Right.
innate introverted strengths. You need to do it the introvert way, not the extrovert way. And so what that means, for example, is if you're in a meeting, you want to do a couple things that can set you up for success. One, you want to request the meeting agenda in advance. Right? Most meetings, if people are doing it right, there's an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it in advance, and then for each topic on that agenda that's relevant to you, where you want to have some input, identify one point that you want to make around each of those topics ahead of time. Get any supporting data or evidence that you need, write it down. So when the time comes at the meeting, you're prepared. But introverts are very good at preparation. And that's one of the keys to being successful as a communicator. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is, and this speaks to how we can make workplaces more inclusive and responsive to the needs of introverts, is to ask for opportunities to contribute in writing, either before the meeting or after the meeting. Or to ask, could you meet with the meeting facilitator or a decision maker after the meeting and have a one-on-one conversation? So it's taking this typical traditional meetings forum, whether it's on Zoom or it's in person, and how can you make that something that's going to be introvert friendly? And Tim, I'll give you for show notes if you want to include. I have a meetings playbook for introverts. It's something free folks can get, and it's ways to have your voice heard and your ideas shine in meetings.
Yeah, that'd be
With
great.
strategies just for
Mm-hmm.
introverts. But it's definitely something that you can master, and so that you're increasingly less uncomfortable, or more comfortable in those spaces.
I think that would be great for our audience, and again, understanding that to it, you have to know who you are, and again, I think the preparation, which is something that, and it could be that I harp on preparation because that's who I am.
Yeah.
But preparation is so important, really, in everything that we do.
Yes.
Doing that background research and having that background knowledge so that you can respond or that you can give that out. It really kind of makes sense as you start to learn to think about yourself and who you are, why you're doing some of those things that you're doing, and having a tool like that, I think, would be very, very helpful for the audience. So from a what are some other tips or things that you could give the audience about this? Let's just say going to a networking event, because for me, going to a networking event, I'd rather put myself in the eyeball with toothpicks than do something like that. But again, it's one of those things that I know that's something that we have to do. We have to go and interact and meet people and make those connections. What are some things that our audience could do as an introvert to be able to go and do those things and be successful as well?
Yeah, I think, Tim, you and I really are the same person. I feel the same way. I know I want to poke my eyes, or let me say, I used to feel that way. But then, like the other strategies and approaches I've talked about, I figured out how to do it the introvert way, and it's not so bad anymore. So here's what I advise and what I've practiced is, so typically if you're going to a big conference, a lot of conferences these days have an app that you can use where you have all the information about the sessions and whatnot. And you'll typically also have a list of attendees there, whether it's on an app or you can possibly get it ahead of time another way. Take a look at who's going to be there and identify ahead of time who you want to meet. And what I suggest is maybe find 3 people per day who you want to make sure that you connect with. Look them up, find them on LinkedIn or find their website for their organization, learn a little bit about them, and then make it your mission each day to check those 3 people off your list in a way that's meaningful. So if there's a cocktail reception, if there's other networking time, find your people. Most conferences will have name badges, so that should be helpful. So prepare ahead of time, identify who you want to meet, talk to them, find out, prepare your talking points ahead of time for each person, or maybe it's just a goal. So I want to meet Tim, and when I talk to him, I want to find out what does he think the biggest trend is in our industry for next year, right? It could be whatever it is you want to get out of it. Or maybe you want some piece of career advice, and keep a list for yourself. And when you've gotten through your 3 people that day, be done, right? You've done what you need to do. You'll have an opportunity to go deeper, right? It's not about trying to collect 50 business cards or get 50 new connections on LinkedIn, but going deeper with a set of people who you identify in advance. The other thing that I would suggest is have some icebreakers in your back pocket, right? A lot of us, we hate small talk as introverts. So that pressure, like, oh, what am I going to talk about, right? It could be the weather, it could be last night's game, whatever it is. But come up with a couple of small talk prompts that are maybe aligned with your professional interests and have those in your hand, so you're not doing it on the fly. And then the last thing I'll offer is, if you're at a big conference and you want to protect your introverted energy, right? You're going to be more likely to burn out if you're at a multi-day conference, especially you're away from home, let's say. Give yourself some grace. And when the official events are done for the day, go up to your hotel room and just recharge, decompress, or maybe let yourself off the hook. And if you don't have to go to every session at the conference, pick the ones that are most important to you, so that you're going to increase the likelihood that you'll be your best self. And just because I have you, I will say, I'll also give you a link I have a conference survival guide for introverts. It has other tips like that, including some other networking strategies. So I'll give you a link to that as well to share.
It's funny as you talk about that. I think I know my daily schedule, right? Because again, we talked about my ADHD is just so bad, and being introverted, I'm a mess at times. So I try and keep a very rigid schedule. And when I go to conferences, let's just say things start at 8:00. Normally, I'm already up and working and have gotten so much done before 8:00 whatever it
Right.
is. But I look at the 8 o'clock meeting, I'm like, oh my God, 8 o'clock meeting, or 8 o'clock session, or this, that, or the other thing. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to get up I got to get up so early and do this, when it's my normal schedule. An 8 o'clock meeting is nothing. But by noon, I'm wiped out. I mean,
Yeah.
I am just exhausted, uh, for for whatever reason it is, and let alone having to do the 6 o'clock happy hour networking event. I'm
Yeah.
done. Just
Yeah.
and so having a way to be able to get through some of those things and still be professional and still
Yep.
do the things that you need to do. If I could have had that 20 years ago or 30 years ago, instead of fighting fighting yourself the whole time, and that's one of the things, with technology right now. If we can get the young professionals or the younger generations to understand, some of these things, how much better their lives will be, and how much better professionals they'll be, to kind of learn from, I wouldn't say our mistakes, but our struggles. Um, it would, it's because, again, they have so much more access to information than we did too,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean,
go ahead.
I was going to say, you probably used to have a Rolodex, right? Like I did,
Oh
like
yeah.
an actual
Uh,
Rolodex with cards. And I don't know how we research companies. Did we go to the library and look on the microfiche? Like, how did you, right? There was no World Wide Web
there
when I
wasn't.
graduated college, or it was in its very early stages, and only the engineering kids knew how to use it or how to
Mhm.
access. Uh, yeah.
I remember when the Palm Pilot came out. I got one of those, and that thing was amazing. I actually have a friend who just got rid of his about 5 years ago. Uh,
Wow.
yeah. So, but the access that we have. Let's just think about the Myers Briggs 30 years ago. I know it's evolved a little bit, but
Well,
how we took it, or I know the last time I took it was probably 5 or 6 years ago, and it was done on computer, and it spits out your profile and gives you all these different types of ideas and tactics and those
well,
types of things. And before you had to fill it out, send it off in the mail. Maybe you get your results back in 3 or 4 weeks,
yeah.
uh, and now we can do this right away. A few weeks ago, actually a couple months ago now, my colleagues and I did what's called the DISC profile.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and so now that's the first time I'd ever done the DISC, and I compare the DISC with the Myers Briggs, and it it really kind of solidifies why I do the things that I do, because we were looking at just from a meeting perspective,
Yeah.
how we interact in meetings, and and it opened my eyes about some of my colleagues and the way I act. I said, oh, that's why you're so direct.
Mhm.
Or those types of things. So we have so much more access to information. And again, if we could get the younger generations to do these things, accept it and lean into it and be authentic and be yourself, you're going to be so much more productive. You're going to be so much more, um, everything in your life will be better. Not just your professional lives, your personal lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just your introversion, even though that's what we're talking about today, right? The same is
Right.
true for however you're wired,
Exactly.
however you're authentically you. Fighting that it is generally not going to turn out well for you, right? I mean, I'm all in favor of using your strengths and building on your strengths. And if there's something that's problematic for you in your life, sure, go ahead and address it, but don't try to pretend to be something you're not. And the sooner you can get your arms around what is my positive core, what makes me me, and how can I use those gifts in all aspects of my life, but
Yeah.
especially in your career. I think it is really such a natural accelerator in terms of leadership and success and fulfillment.
Yeah. And when you're trying to be something or somebody that you're not, people see through it relatively quickly,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you lose credibility that way. It's again, I'd rather say I don't know, or I'm not good at that. Just
Yeah.
come right out and say, no, that's not something that I can do. As a for example, where we live, I've got an HOA, and I don't want to get into HOA stuff, but they needed something done, and I said, you can give me a report, and I can go through it, and I could do some of the research for you, but I'm not the detail person. Don't give me numbers.
Right.
I'll go through and I can pick stuff out, but I'm not the numbers person. And they were looking for a numbers person. They said, well, why can't you just do the numbers? I said, well, that's not what I do. I can't help you there. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
and they couldn't understand why I wouldn't help them in that aspect. It's like, if I said I could do it, it's not actually helping you either. So
That's right.
lean into, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I'm not good at something. Give that off to somebody else. And again, I think that's a sign of a good leader, especially. So what are some characteristics or things that introverts can do to really be good leaders?
Well, it comes back to tapping into your innate gifts. So I'll highlight a few things that are really some core leadership strengths, I think, of introverts, right? And so one is we tend to have a calm demeanor, right? We're not the loudest voice in the room, but we tend to be very good when there is agitation or conflict or some type of crisis, in not just stepping in immediately and wanting to throw some idea on the table and speak out loud, right? We say introverts tend to think out loud. Extroverts tend to think out
Right.
loud. Introverts do not, right? So you can sit back during a time of crisis or conflict and really take in what's going on, appreciate the context more deeply, so that when you do speak up, the ideas that you're sharing are much more grounded in that context, in the nuance, as well as in fact. The next thing, and this is something I think is lost on people, is that introverts tend to be highly emotionally intelligent. We have really high levels of empathy. And so this lets us see how people on our team or other people in the communities we serve, other people we work with, what their needs are. What are their perspectives? If we're in a negotiation or we're trying to design a program that is going to meet a community's needs, what are the dynamics going around the table? What are people's emotions? What are their fears? What do they care about? We have a stronger ability to pick up on those and then design our recommendations and cater how we communicate to those nuances. That's a huge leadership gift. We're reflective thinkers. So we have this, when you're very introspective, like we are as introverts, you're able to be a stabilizing force, but you're also able to come up with innovations and creative solutions that the people who are speaking off the cuff aren't necessarily going to have. So that positions you to be an innovative leader, to be an innovative thinker. And then the last thing I'll mention is we're really good listeners. And that sounds like, listening, right? It's kind of ho-hum. But being a deep and reflective listener allows you to do a lot of things. It allows you to appreciate the depth of a situation, the depth of a need more powerfully than someone who's extroverted. It also allows you to, when we talk about listening, it's not just about with our ears, right? It's listening with our eyes as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're very good at picking up on nonverbal cues. So you can see if in someone's eyes, in how someone is leaning forward, which might communicate some interest and support, or they're leaning back with their arms folded, which could be some defensiveness, right? We're very good at picking up on those cues. And that's a really powerful communication skill. So communication is so much more than just speaking, right? You know that.
Yeah.
So how you're taking it in, how you're processing what you're taking in, and then how that really bolsters your ability to lead, to offer solutions, to motivate people, to inspire trust, and to build collaboration. That's really powerful.
Yeah, and as you talked about that, you said a lot of things, and I started thinking about leaders and some of the things that they've done and who these people are. I think good leader, there are good extrovert leaders and there are good introvert leaders. Not singling any of them out, but I think when you get to the whole idea of listening, that to me is something that really kind of separates people. If you if you're actually interested and caring enough to listen to what other people have to say and what they think, I think that to me is one of the biggest separators of leaders that there is.
Yep. Yep. And it really, when people feel like you're listening to them, when they think you're really seeing them and you're not just waiting for them to finish talking so that you can say what you want to say, right?
Yeah.
It really, it helps to strengthen your relationship with them,
Mm-hmm.
and it elevates the esteem in which they hold you, because it
Yeah.
speaks well of you, and it makes them feel cared for.
Right. So what about, introverts in terms of advocating for themselves, in terms of getting promotions or negotiating raises,
Yeah.
or even negotiating, sales agreements or contracts or things of that nature, where again, we're, I don't want to say that I don't even want to say that. I think I'm going to cut that out, but you know what the word, I don't know the exact word I'm trying to say. But I think we're quiet. We're more, we're perceived, we're perceived as more quiet, but inside, again, we're thinking and we're doing all those other things that people don't even realize that we're doing. So talk about introverts in terms of those negotiation types of skills.
Yeah. And I think what you might be getting at a little there too is we're not comfortable shining a light on our accomplishments in the
Yeah.
same way that
Yes.
extroverts are, right? So we're uncomfortable being in the spotlight perhaps, and
Yes.
then which also can undercut our confidence when we're going ahead to make an ask, whether it's for a promotion, a raise, a project role, or trying to get some recognition for our thought leadership. So it won't surprise you. What I'm going to talk about is very based in tapping into the introvert's strengths. So the first thing you're going to want to do, and let's say let's say you want to ask for a raise. So the first thing you want to do is, we talked about how good introverts are at preparing. You want to do research. You want to find out what's the salary band for people in your industry, in your geographic area, with your level of experience. What's the salary range there, and where do you fall within that? So you want to come to the negotiation with data in hand. You want to have your evidence there. The next thing you want to do is you want to set clear goals for the negotiation. What's your ideal that you want to accomplish? And what's the minimum that you're willing to take? And what that lets you do is it removes some of the need to make decisions in the moment, because you've already given thought ahead of
Mm-hmm.
time. Let's say you're asking for a $10,000 raise. That's really what you want, but you're not willing to take less than 8. If your employer offers you 6, you've already come to that decision, right? That 6 is not going to cut it for you. And of course, every situation is going to be unique, but I'm simplifying it a bit.
Right.
But it takes some of that pressure off. So you've made some of those decisions ahead of time. The next thing is, we just talked about how good introverts are at active listening. You want to pay attention to nonverbal cues that are coming up in your conversation with whoever you're negotiating with, right? Again, are they leaning forward? Are they leaning back? Are they nodding? Did they seem to have some visceral reaction to a point you made? Pay attention to those things so that you can build on the things that seem to be resonating, and maybe adjust your approach for things that are being counterproductive. Another really big thing, and this is something that introverts are great at, is you want to create a compendium of your accomplishments over the course of the year. And this is something you can't do it in the moment, or you can, but it's going to be a lot more stressful and a lot more work. But as you're going about your day, your week, your months, your whole year, keep a list. Create a folder on your computer if you want. Keep a list of contributions you've made. Keep an email folder where you save any emails you receive from other people, either in your organization or beyond it, with praise or acknowledging something you've done, some contribution you've made. Create this folder. You can call it, emails that say I'm great, or reasons I'm a rock star, whatever you want to call it. And you have it in one place, so you can refer back to that when the time comes. You don't want to then be scrambling, if a promotion opens up, or you
Right.
realize that you're going to be asking for a raise, or you're planning to ahead of time. Get your ducks in a row. Get this information together so that you have it handy and it's easy to tap into. And here's one that I think that doesn't immediately come to mind, but we talked a little bit before about the energy drain that introverts face, that we're more susceptible to at work. Practice self-care when you're in a negotiating process. And that means if you know that you have a negotiating meeting with your boss, that's probably something that's going to be draining for you. Maybe block the hour before your meeting and the hour after your meeting so that you can charge up ahead of time, and then you have that hour afterwards to decompress and reflect on how the experience went. And then that'll lead me to my last recommendation, reflecting. So we're very good at going deep and reflecting on experiences. After each negotiating meeting, after the whole process is done, write down some reflections for yourself about what seemed to work. When was I most comfortable? When did I feel most confident? What language did I use that seemed to have the most positive impact on the process, so that you can reflect, identify areas you can build upon for next time, and also identify things you might want to make some tweaks to the next time you go about negotiating.
That's a really good idea. I never really thought about that from that perspective. Generally, you're just kind of thinking about how I do things. Generally, when I have big meetings or things of that nature, I'll call one or two people and we'll talk it through after it's over, and then I let it go. But being able to write it down, to go back and look at, like you said, where I feel really good in the language that I used, we can then go back and say, okay, start practicing that, or start putting those things into practice as well. That's a really good idea. So is there anything else that we did not talk about that you think our audience should know?
I think that I would love to see your audience begin as they move through their careers. I would love to see them think about how they can change the narrative about introverts in today's workplaces. So certainly advocate for yourself and consider the strategies we talked about today, but take advantage of opportunities to educate other people, to educate your manager, to educate your peers, other people you network with, about what your introversion means, right? I would encourage people, to the extent that you're comfortable, say, hey, I just want you to know, I feel like I'm going to be able to contribute a lot more to this conversation or to this dialogue if I can give you my ideas in writing, because I'm an introvert, which means that I'm really good. I'm really good at when I have time to prepare. Let them know that that's what that means, to the extent that you're comfortable. So it's like, I feel like introversion has become a dirty word. And I'd love to change that. I tell people that I'm a proud introvert, and it's interesting when I reflect on that I feel the need to say that, right? We shouldn't have to. I don't think people say, oh, I'm a proud extrovert. Right. It's
Right.
To the extent that you can help to change this narrative and show others all the great things it means when you're an introvert, and how you can contribute, how you can be a leader, and why it's valuable having an introvert, or of course many introverts, on your team at work.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, as you said that, since I've been doing this podcast, the majority of people that I've spoken with are introverts, and the research that I've been doing is the majority of people in the world are introverts, and it seems like we've got everything flipped around, and so that we're acting like and behaving like the majority of the world are extroverts.
Yeah.
And it didn't hit me until you just said what you just said.
Yeah, and think of this: only 2% of senior executives in this country, in corporations, are introverted. Right? We are significantly underrepresented at the top, because there's this extrovert bias that's just everywhere, especially in business.
No, that's it's pretty eye opening. But again, figure out who you are and lean into it, and don't worry about what everybody else is saying or doing. I mean, because
that's exactly right.
It's you've got to be you.
Yep.
So, Stacey, where can people find you and work with you and get those free resources?
So people can work with me and find out about me and get all these good resources by going to my website, which is ifactorleadership.com. If you go to the website, you'll actually see there's a pop-up there that'll help you to download a productivity guide that I created for introverts. It's daily productivity hacks that help you to be more productive with less stress. I'm going to put my conference survival guide and the meetings playbook. I'll give you the links for the show notes to put that there. If you go to ifactorgift.com, there'll be some resources there as well. And folks can also find me on LinkedIn, and you can learn about how you can work with me. I have an on-demand learning program called the Introverts Leadership Formula that it's a self-paced course you can go through. And then I also do private coaching.
That's awesome. And for anybody, I'll make sure that all those are in the show notes for everybody. And so, Stacey, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I really do appreciate it. I love the conversation. And, again, for everybody out there, please just lean into who you are. Figure out who you are and lean into it. So, again, thanks so much, Stacey.
Thanks,
Take care.
Tim. It was a pleasure.
Be sure to visit speakingwithconfidencepodcast.com to join our growing community and register for the Formula for Public Speaking course. Always remember, your voice has the power to change the world. We'll talk to you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be. We'll see you next time. Take care. I hope you enjoyed the latest episode of Speaking with Confidence. Give us a review to tell everyone why you love the podcast. You can also download, like, and share the podcast with friends. Be sure to visit formulaforpublicspeaking.com and sign up for the Formula for Public Speaking course. It's a step-by-step system to help you become the confident and powerful speaker you've always wanted to be.